I welcome you to my channel. Subscribe and listen to my new stories every day. The rain pattered against the window, a soft drumming that usually brought comfort, but tonight it seemed only to echo the tumult in my heart. I glanced over at Sarah, my wife of 6 years, her breathing deep and even, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. She had returned from her week-long business trip to Paris, visibly exhausted and more detached than usual. Something about her demeanor didn't sit right with me, but I pushed those thoughts away, chalking it up to her fatigue. As she settled into bed, Sarah mumbled a sleepy thanks when I offered to unpack her suitcase. She was asleep almost before her head hit the pillow. The soft glow of the bedside lamp cast long shadows as I carried her suitcase to the living room. It was heavier than I expected, laden with more than just the usual travel essentials. I unzipped the suitcase, the sound harsh in the quiet of our apartment. The first layer was typical: soiled clothes, a few souvenirs, and toiletry items. But as I dug deeper, my fingers brushed against something unfamiliar. It was a small, velvet box, the kind that promises something more significant than mere trinkets. My heart pounded as I opened it, revealing a pair of men's cufflinks, elegant and clearly expensive, engraved with initials that were not mine. The room spun slightly as I sat back on my heels, the cufflinks cold in my trembling hand. Thoughts raced through my mind, each more unsettling than the last. I rummaged further, a growing sense of dread clouding my judgment. Then, tucked between layers of clothing, I found a bundle of letters, their pages filled with words of affection and plans for future rendezvous. Words that were not meant for me. I felt as though I was outside of my body, watching a scene from someone else's life. Betrayal seared through me, hot and fierce. I waited, agonizing hours until morning, when Sarah finally woke. Her smile faded as she saw the open suitcase and the items laid out on the coffee table. "Mark, she began, her voice faltering. "Who is he?" I interrupted, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. She hesitated, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's not what you think," she pleaded. "Don't lie to me, Sarah." "How long?" The demand came out harsher than I intended. "It was a mistake," she sobbed. "It meant nothing. I was going to end it." But her words fell on deaf ears. The trust we had built over years shattered in a moment. I had loved her deeply, fiercely, and now that love turned to ash, fueling a darker intent. "You've made a fool of me," I said coldly, my mind racing with plans of retribution. "And for that, you'll regret ever crossing me." Sarah reached out, her hand trembling. "Please, Mark, can we talk about this? I love you, I was just..." I stepped back, cutting her off. "Save your excuses for someone who cares." In the following weeks, I took my revenge, systematically dismantling the life we had built together. I exposed her affair to her colleagues, her family, and our friends. The divorce was quick, fueled by her guilt and my unrelenting drive for vengeance. When all was said and done, Sarah was a shadow of the woman I once loved, and I was no longer the man she had married. We never spoke again, the finality of our parting a mutual, silent agreement. As I look back now, the rain still falling outside, I wonder if the price of my revenge was too high. But then, I remember the pain, and I convince myself that it was justified. After all, betrayal begets betrayal. The coffee shop was bustling with the usual morning crowd, the air thick with the scent of roasted beans and the murmur of conversations. I sat in the corner, a cold latte untouched in front of me, scanning the room with a simmering impatience. Today was the day I would confront him, the other man in Sarah's life. His name was Eric, and from the photos I'd found, he was everything I was not: suave, polished, with a roguish charm that made my blood boil even more. A chime from the door announced his arrival. Recognizing him immediately, I felt my grip tighten around the cup. He ordered his drink and, spotting an empty seat across from me, made his way over, oblivious to the storm he was about to enter. "Mind if I sit here?" Eric asked, his voice casual. I looked up, fixing him with a cold stare. Actually, I was hoping you would, I said, my tone icy. Eric paused, a flicker of recognition crossing his features as he took in my expression. I'm sorry, have we met? We haven't, I replied, sliding the velvet box across the table towards him. But you seem to have left something in my house. His face paled as he looked down at the cufflinks, his facade cracking. Look, if this is about Sarah. It's exactly about Sarah, I cut him off, my voice low and threatening. You thought you could just play around and walk away without consequences. Eric swallowed, his composure slipping. I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt, he muttered, glancing around nervously. Too late for regrets, I snapped, leaning in closer. You messed with the wrong man's life. I'll end it. I swear, Eric said quickly, a note of desperation in his voice. It was a mistake. I didn't realize she was married. I scoffed, the sound bitter. You didn't bother to ask, did you? Just saw an opportunity and took it. He was silent, the guilt evident in his downturned eyes. What do you want from me? He finally asked, his voice resigned. I want you to disappear. Leave the city. If I see you or hear you're in contact with her again, the next conversation won't be just a conversation. My threat hung heavy between us. Eric nodded, pushing the chair back as he stood. You won't see me again, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. As he walked away, a part of me felt victorious, another hollow. The confrontation had done little to ease the ache of betrayal. I knew my warpath was just beginning. The ruin I had started to inflict on Sarah's life was only the tip of the iceberg. There were more threads to this conspiracy, more secrets to uncover. Leaving the coffee shop, I felt the weight of the morning's events settle on me. The path of revenge I had chosen was dark and uncertain, but turning back was no longer an option. I would uncover every lie, expose every deceit, and in doing so, perhaps find a semblance of the peace that had been stolen from me. The city sprawled beneath me, a tapestry of light and shadow as I stood on the rooftop, my thoughts as tumultuous as the wind that whipped around me. It had been a week since my confrontation with Eric, and my thirst for retribution had only deepened. Tonight, I was taking a more dangerous step, one that would either expose the full extent of Sarah's betrayal or force me into the shadows. I checked my watch, it was nearly time. In the pocket of my dark jacket, the small, digital recorder was ready. The plan was risky, but necessary. I was meeting with Jenna, Sarah's closest friend and confidant. If anyone knew the depths of Sarah's secrets, it was Jenna. The sound of footsteps alerted me to her arrival. Jenna emerged from the door onto the rooftop, her form outlined against the city lights. Her expression was cautious, her eyes searching. Mark, this is insane. We shouldn't be meeting like this, she said, her voice edged with nervousness. I stepped forward, my resolve firm. I need to know everything, Jenna. You're her best friend. You must know why she did it. Jenna hesitated, her lips pressed into a thin line. It's complicated, Mark. Sarah is going through a lot. That's not good enough. I found those letters, Jenna. The trips, the messages. How deep does this go? My voice was sharp, cutting through the night air. She sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. It started as a fling, a mistake. But she fell for him, Mark. It wasn't just physical. She thought she loved him. The revelation stung, more than I expected. And you knew. All this time, you covered for her. I was trying to protect her. Jenna shot back, her voice rising. She was going to end it, tell you everything. But she was scared of losing you. The recorder in my pocket felt like a lead weight. Every word Jenna spoke was being captured, another piece in the complex puzzle of betrayal. So, what now, Mark? What are you going to do with this? Jenna asked, her eyes wary. I pulled out the recorder, showing it to her. I'm going to expose everything. Everyone will know the truth. Jenna took a step back, her face pale. You'll ruin her, Mark. Is that what you want? Total destruction. It's what she deserves, I replied coldly. She ruined me first. We stood there, the tension between us as palpable as the chilly night air. Finally, Jenna nodded, defeated. I'll tell you everything. But please, think about what this will do. Not just to Sarah, but to you, too. As Jenna began to speak, the details of Sarah's duplicity unfurled like a dark tapestry. The more I learned, the deeper my heart sank into a pit of despair and anger. By the time Jenna left, I was armed with enough information to bring Sarah's world crashing down. But the weight of her words lingered, a haunting echo in my mind. Was I seeking justice, or was I just as lost in this web of vengeance as Sarah was in her deceit? As I left the rooftop, the city below me felt different, as if it mirrored the turmoil in my soul. The air was thick with tension as I approached the Grand Hotel, the site of the final confrontation. Tonight, the facade of civility would fall, and the depth of my vengeance would be revealed. My preparations were meticulous, every detail sharpened to a fine point, ready to strike. Inside, the chandelier cast a golden glow, throwing long shadows that seemed to whisper of the coming storm. I spotted Sarah immediately, radiant yet visibly tense, standing alone by the grand staircase. Her eyes found mine across the room, a flicker of fear passing through them. I approached, each step measured and deliberate. The crowd parted, intuitively sensing the undercurrent of danger. Sarah turned to face me, her face pale but composed. Mark, why are you here? This isn't necessary, she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. Isn't it? I countered, my voice low and menacing. After everything, you think we can just walk away without settling the score? Sarah's eyes darted around, seeking an escape she wouldn't find. What do you want from me? I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything, I said, my words slicing through the hum of conversation around us. Pulling out my phone, I showed her the screen, a live feed of her office, her colleagues gathered, watching a projection of her emails, her messages with Eric, everything laid bare. Her professional reputation would crumble within hours. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. How could you? It's only the beginning, I promised, a cold smile playing on my lips. Turning to the room, I raised my voice. Ladies and gentlemen, you are witnessing the true face of betrayal. The crowd murmured, their eyes shifting from me to Sarah in shocked realization. Sarah's stature seemed to diminish with each passing second, her world collapsing around her. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more card to play. And for the finale, I said, turning back to her. I've made sure that your little affair and all its sordid details will be front-page news tomorrow. Everyone will know the kind of person you really are. Sarah looked like she had been struck, her body swaying slightly. You want to destroy me, she whispered, realization dawning. Like you destroyed me, I confirmed. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they held no sway over me now. I loved you, she said, her voice breaking. Despite everything, I did. And that was your mistake, I replied, my voice void of any warmth. Turning on my heel, I left her there, amidst the whispers and stares of the crowd, a pariah in her own world. I walked out of the hotel, the cold night air hitting my face. The weight of my actions, the depth of my revenge, it all settled around me like a cloak. I had taken everything from Sarah, repaid betrayal with betrayal. But as I disappeared into the night, a solitary figure against the city lights, I couldn't shake the emptiness that clung to my soul. Victory? Perhaps. Justice? Maybe. But at what cost? As the city swallowed me whole, I realized that some stains, like betrayal, never truly wash away. They linger, coloring everything with shades of gray. And as I walked on, I knew this was the end, not just for what Sarah and I had, but for the man I once was. The final act of vengeance had consumed us both, leaving nothing but echoes and ashes in its wake.